This is part 5 of the video series. It deals with air brakes. You will need this information for safe operation of the air brakes used on trucks and buses. If you want to pull a trailer with air brakes, you also need to review part 6 of the series, combination vehicles. This part, part 5, covers air brake system parts, dual air brake systems, inspecting air brakes, and using air brakes. What is an air brake system? A braking system that uses compressed air to make the brakes work. You can apply all the braking force you need to each of the wheels of a heavy vehicle, even units pulling 2 or 3 trailers. Air brakes are a safe way of stopping large vehicles if the brakes are well maintained and used right. However, you must know more about air brakes than the simpler brake systems used on light vehicles. We will use this brake system mock-up to identify the parts of the brake system and to explain the functions of each. Air brake systems are 3 braking systems combined. The service brake system applies and releases the brakes when you use the brake pedal during normal driving. The parking brake system applies and releases the parking brakes when you use the parking brake control. The emergency brake system uses parts of the service and parking brake systems to stop the vehicle in the event of a brake system failure. There are many parts to an air brake system. You should know about the parts discussed here. The air compressor pumps air into the air storage tanks. The air compressor is connected to the engine through gears or a V-belt. The compressor may be air-cooled or may be cooled by the engine cooling system. It may have its own oil supply or be lubricated by engine oil. If the compressor has its own oil supply, check the oil level before driving. The governor controls when the air compressor will pump air into the air storage tanks. When air tank pressure rises to the cutout level, this is normally about 125 pounds per square inch, or PSI, the governor stops the compressor from pumping air. When the air tank pressure falls to the cut-in pressure, around 100 PSI, the governor allows the compressor to start pumping again. Air storage tanks are used to hold compressed air. The number and size of air tanks varies among vehicles. The tanks will hold enough air to allow the brakes to be used several times even if the compressor stops working. Compressed air usually has some water and some compressor oil in it, which is bad for the brake system. The water can freeze in cold weather and cause brake failure. The water and oil tend to collect in the bottom of the air tank. Because of this, each air tank is equipped with a drain valve in the bottom. There are 2 types of drain valves. Manual, operated by turning a key a quarter turn or by pulling a cable. At the end of each day's driving, you must drain the tanks yourself. Automatic. The water and oil are automatically expelled, that is, drained. Automatic valves may also be equipped for manual draining. The automatic type drain valves are available with electric heating devices. This helps prevent freeze-ups in cold weather. Some air brake systems have an alcohol evaporator to put alcohol into the air system. This helps to reduce the risk of ice in the air brake valves and other parts during cold weather. Ice inside the system can make the brakes stop working. Check the alcohol container and fill up as necessary every day during cold weather. Even if your brake system has an alcohol evaporator, daily air tank drainage is still needed to get rid of water and oil, unless the system has automatic drain valves. A safety relief valve is installed in the first tank the air compressor pumps air to. The safety valve protects the tank and the rest of the system from too much pressure. The valve is usually set to open at 150 PSI. If the safety valve releases air before that setting, something is wrong. Have it fixed by a mechanic. You put on the brakes by pushing down the brake pedal. It is also called the foot valve or the treadle valve. Pushing the pedal down harder applies more air pressure. Letting up on the brake pedal reduces the air pressure and releases the brakes. Releasing the brakes lets some compressed air go out of the system, so the air pressure in the tanks is reduced. That pressure must be made up by the air compressor. Pressing and releasing the brake pedal unnecessarily can let air out faster than the compressor can replace it. If the pressure gets too low, the brakes won't work. When you push the brake pedal down, two forces push back against your foot. One force comes from a spring. The second force comes from the air pressure going to the brakes. This tells you how much air pressure is being applied to the brakes. Foundation brakes are used at each wheel. The most common type is the S-cam drum brake. Let's look at the parts of the S-cam drum brake. Brake drums are located on each end of the vehicle's axles. The wheels are bolted to the drum. The braking mechanism is inside the drum. To stop, the brake shoes and linings are pushed against the side of the drum. This causes friction, which slows the vehicle. It also creates heat. The heat a brake drum can take without damage depends on how hard and how long the brakes are used. Too much heat can make the brakes stop working. When you push the brake pedal, air is let into each brake chamber. Air pressure pushes the rod out, moving the slack adjuster, thus twisting the brake cam shaft. This turns the S-cam. It's called an S-cam because it is shaped like the letter S. The S-cam forces the brake shoes away from one another and presses them against the inside of the brake drum. When you release the brake pedal, the S-cam rotates back and a spring pulls the brake shoes away from the drum, letting the wheels roll freely again. In this type brake, the brake chamber push rod pushes a wedge directly between the ends of the two brake shoes. Wedge brakes may have a single brake chamber or two brake chambers, pushing wedges in at both ends of the brake shoes. Wedge-type brakes may be self-adjusting or may require manual adjustments. In air-operated disc brakes, air pressure acts on the brake chamber and slack adjuster, like the S-cam brakes. But instead of the S-cam, a power screw is used. All brake systems work basically the same way. That is, by the brake linings pushing against the drum. The difference is the S-cam, the wedge, or the power screw that mechanically starts the action. All air brake vehicles have a pressure gauge connected to the air tank. If the vehicle has a dual air brake system, there will be a gauge for each half of the system, or a single gauge with two needles. Dual systems will be discussed later. These gauges tell you how much pressure is in the air tanks. The application pressure gauge tells you how much air pressure you are applying to the brakes. Note that not all vehicles have application pressure gauges. When going down steep grades, increasing application pressure to hold the same speed means the brakes are fading. Slow down and use a lower gear. The need for increased application can also be caused by brakes out of adjustment, air leaks, or mechanical problems. A low air pressure warning signal is required on vehicles with air brakes. A warning signal you can see must come on before the pressure in the tanks falls below 60 psi. On older vehicles, the light will come on when half of the governor cutout pressure is reached. On large buses, it is common for those low air pressure warning signals to be set for 80 to 85 psi, not 60 psi. Drivers behind you must be warned when you put your brakes on. The air brake system does this with an electric switch that works by air pressure. The switch turns on the brake lights when you put on the air brakes. With newer vehicles, many have automatic front wheel limiting valves. They reduce the air to the front brakes except when the brakes are put on very hard, 60 psi or more application pressure. These valves cannot be controlled by the driver. All trucks, truck tractors, and buses must be equipped with emergency brakes and parking brakes. They must be held on by mechanical force because air pressure can eventually leak away. Spring brakes are the type used for emergency and parking brakes. In normal driving, powerful springs are held back by air pressure. If the air pressure is removed, the springs put on the brakes. A parking brake control in the cab allows the driver to let the air out of the spring brake system. This lets the springs put the brakes on. A leak in the air brake system, which causes the air pressure to be lost, will also cause the springs to put on the brakes. Tractor and straight truck spring brakes will come fully on when air pressure drops to a range of 20 to 45 psi. Do not wait for the brakes to come on automatically. When the low air pressure warning light and buzzer first come on, bring the vehicle to a safe stop right away while you can still control the brakes. The braking power of spring brakes depends on the brakes being an adjustment. If the brakes are not adjusted right, neither the regular brakes nor the emergency parking brakes will work right. In newer vehicles with air brakes, you put on the parking brakes using a diamond-shaped yellow push-pull control knob. You pull the knob out to put the parking brakes, spring brakes, on, and push it in to release them. On older vehicles, the parking brakes may be controlled by a lever. Use the parking brakes whenever you park. Caution. Never push the brake pedal down when the spring brakes are on. If you do, the brakes could be damaged by the combined forces of the springs and the air pressure. Many brake systems are designed so that this will not happen, but not all systems are set up that way, and those that are may not always work. It is much better to develop the habit of not pushing the pedal down when the spring brakes are on. Dual parking control valves. When main air pressure is lost, the spring brakes come on. Some vehicles, such as buses, have a separate air tank which can be used to release the spring brakes. This is so you can move the vehicle in an emergency situation. One of the valves is a push-pull type and is used to put on the spring brakes for parking. The other valve is spring-loaded in the out position. When you push the control in, air from the separate air tank releases the spring brakes so you can move. When you release the button, the spring brakes come on again. There is only enough air in the separate tank to do this a few times. Therefore, plan carefully when moving. Otherwise, you may be stopped in a dangerous location when the separate air supply runs out.
Why must air tanks be drained? What is a supply pressure gauge used for? All vehicles with air brakes must have a low air pressure warning signal. True or false? What are spring brakes? Front wheel brakes are good under all conditions. True or false? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Most newer heavy-duty vehicles use dual air brake systems for safety. A dual air brake system has two separate air brake systems which use a single set of brake controls. Each system has its own air tanks, hoses, lines, etc. One system typically operates the regular brakes on the rear axle or axles. The other system operates the regular brakes on the front axle and possibly one rear axle. Both systems supply air to the trailer, if there is one. The first system is called the primary system, the other is called the secondary system. Before driving a vehicle with a dual air system, allow time for the air compressor to build up a minimum of 100 psi pressure in both the primary and secondary systems. Watch the primary and secondary air pressure gauges, or needles if the system has two needles in one gauge. Pay attention to the low air pressure warning light and buzzer. The warning light and buzzer should shut off when the air pressure in both systems rises to a value set by the manufacturer. This value must be greater than 60 psi. The warning light and buzzer should come on before the air pressure drops below 60 psi in either system. If this happens while driving, you should stop right away and safely park the vehicle. If one air system is very low on pressure, either the front or the rear brakes will not be operating fully. This means it will take you longer to stop. Bring the vehicle to a safe stop and have the air brake system fixed. You should use the basic 7-step inspection procedure described in Part 2 to inspect your vehicle. There are more things to inspect on a vehicle with air brakes than on one without them. We'll discuss these things here in the order that they fit into the 7-step inspection procedure. Check air compressor drive belt if the compressor is belt-driven. If the air compressor is belt-driven, check the condition and tightness of the belt. The belt should be in good condition. Check manual slack adjusters on S-cam brakes. Park on level ground and chock the wheels to prevent the vehicle from moving. Turn off the parking brakes so you can move the slack adjusters. Use gloves and pull hard on each slack adjuster that you can get to. If a slack adjuster moves more than about 1 inch where the push rod attaches to it, it probably needs adjustment. Adjust it or have it adjusted. Vehicles with too much brake slack can be very hard to stop. Out-of-adjustment brakes are the most common problem found in roadside inspections. Be safe. Check the slack adjusters. Check brake drums or discs, linings, and hoses. Brake drums or discs must not have cracks longer than 1/2 the width of the friction area. Linings, friction material, must not be loose, soaked with oil or grease. They must not be thinner than 1/32 of an inch at the thinnest point. This is the minimum thickness permitted, but for best safety, the lining should not be this thin. Mechanical parts must be in place, not broken or missing. Check the air hoses connected to the brake chambers to make sure they aren't cut or worn due to rubbing. Do these checks instead of the hydraulic brake check shown in Part 2, Step 7, Check Brake System. Test low pressure warning signal. Shut the engine off when you have enough air pressure that the low pressure warning signal is not on. Turn the electrical power on and step on and off the brake pedal to reduce air tank pressure. The low air pressure warning signal must come on before the pressure drops to less than 60 psi in the air tank, or tank with the lowest air pressure in dual air systems. If the warning signal doesn't work, you could lose air pressure and you would not know it. This could cause sudden emergency braking in a single circuit air system. In dual systems, the stopping distance will be increased. Only limited braking can be done before the spring brakes come on. Check that the spring brakes come on automatically. Chock the wheels, release the parking brakes when you have enough air pressure to do this, and shut the engine off. Step on and off the brake pedal to reduce the air tank pressure. The parking brake knob should pop out when the air pressure falls to the manufacturer's specification, usually in a range between 20 to 40 psi. This causes the spring brakes to come on. Check the rate of air pressure buildup. With the engine at operating RPM, the pressure should build from 85 to 100 psi within 45 seconds in dual air systems. If the vehicle has larger than minimum air tanks, the buildup time can be longer and still be safe. Check the manufacturer's specifications. In single air systems, pre-1975, typical requirements are pressure buildup from 50 to 90 psi within 3 minutes with the engine at idle speed of 600 to 900 RPM. If air pressure does not build up fast enough, your pressure may drop too low during driving, requiring an emergency stop. Don't drive until you get the problem fixed. Test air leakage rate. With a fully charged air system, typically 125 psi, turn off the engine and release the service brake and time the air pressure drop. The loss rate should be less than 2 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles, less than 3 psi in 1 minute for combination vehicles. Then apply 90 psi or more with the brake pedal. After the initial pressure drop, if the air pressure falls more than 3 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles, more than 4 psi for combination vehicles, the air loss rate is too much. Check for air leaks and fix before driving the vehicle. Otherwise, you could lose your brakes while driving. Check air compressor governor cut-in and cut-out pressures. Pumping by the air compressor should start at about 100 psi and should stop at about 125 psi. Check manufacturer's specifications. Run the engine at a fast idle. The air governor should cut out the air compressor at about the manufacturer's specified pressure. The air pressure shown by your gauge or gauges will stop rising. With the engine idling, step on and off the brake to reduce the air tank pressure. The compressor should cut in at about the manufacturer's specified cut-in pressure. The pressure should begin to rise. If the air governor does not work as described, it may need to be fixed. A governor that does not work right may not keep enough air pressure for safe driving. Test parking brake. Stop the vehicle, put the parking brake on, and gently pull against it in a low gear to test that the parking brake will hold. Test service brakes. Wait for normal air pressure, release the parking brake, move the vehicle forward slowly, about 5 miles per hour, and apply the brakes firmly using the brake pedal. Note any vehicle pulling to one side, unusual feel, or delayed stopping action. This test may show you problems which you otherwise wouldn't know about until you needed brakes on the road.
What is a dual air brake system? What are slack adjusters? How can you check slack adjusters? How can you test the low pressure warning signal? How can you check that the spring brakes come on automatically? What are the maximum leakage rates? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Push the brake pedal down. Control the pressure so the vehicle comes to a smooth, safe stop. If you have a manual transmission, don't push the clutch in until the engine RPM is down close to idle. When stopped, select a starting gear. You should brake so you can steer, and so your vehicle stays in a straight line. Use one of the following two methods. Controlled braking. This method is also called squeeze braking. Put on the brakes as hard as you can without locking the wheels. Do not turn the steering wheel while doing this. If you need to make larger steering adjustments or if you feel the wheels sliding, release the brakes. Brake again as soon as the tires get traction. Stab braking. Press on the brake pedal as hard as you can. Release the brakes when the wheels lock up. As soon as the wheels start rolling, put on the brakes fully again. It can take up to 1 second for the wheels to start rolling after you release the brakes. Make sure you stay off the brakes long enough to get the wheels rolling again. Otherwise, the vehicle may not stay in a straight line. We talked about stopping distances in Part 2 under speed and stopping distance. With air brakes, there is an added delay, the time required for the brakes to work after the brake pedal is pushed. With hydraulic brakes, used on cars and light to medium trucks, the brakes work instantly. However, with air brakes, it takes a little time, up to 1/2 second, for the air to flow through the lines to the brakes. Thus, the total stopping distance for vehicles with air brakes is made up of 4 different factors. 1. Perception distance. 2. Reaction distance. 3. Brake lag distance. 4. Effective braking distance equals total stopping distance. The air brake lag distance at 55 miles per hour on dry pavement adds about 32 feet. So at 55 mph for an average driver under good traction and brake conditions, the total stopping distance is over 300 feet. This is longer than a football field. When you use the brakes, they get hot. Brakes can take a lot of heat. However, brakes will stop working if there is too much heat. Excessive heat is caused by trying to slow down from too high a speed too many times or too quickly. Brakes will fade, that is, have less stopping power, when they get too hot. They can fade so badly they will not slow you down. The right way to go down long grades is to use a low gear and go slow enough that a fairly light, steady use of the brakes will keep you from speeding up. If you go slow enough, the brakes will be able to get rid of the heat so they will work as they should. Some people believe that using the brakes hard going downhill but letting up on them from time to time will allow them to cool. Tests have shown this is not true. Brakes cool very slowly, so the cooling between hard brakings is not enough to prevent overheating. Also, the vehicle picks up speed when the brakes are let up, which means more hard braking to slow it back down. Braking in this way, on and off, builds up more heat than the light, steady method does. Therefore, go slow enough, use the right gear, and maintain light, steady pressure on the brakes. It is always important for the brakes to be adjusted right. However, it is especially important when going down steep grades. In addition to proper slack adjustment, the air brake system should be balanced to give about the same braking at each of the wheels. Otherwise, some brakes will do more work than others. They will heat up and lose some of their stopping power. Brake balance can be tested and fixed by good air brake mechanics. If the low air pressure warning comes on, stop and safely park your vehicle as soon as possible. There might be an air leak in the system. Control braking is possible only while enough air remains in the air tanks. The spring brakes will come on when the air pressure drops into the range 20 to 45 psi. A heavily loaded vehicle will take a long distance to stop because the spring brakes do not work on all axles. Lightly loaded vehicles or vehicles on slippery roads may skid out of control when the spring brakes come on. It is much safer to stop while there is enough air in the tanks to use the foot brake. Anytime you park, use the parking brakes, except as noted here. Pull the parking brake control knob out to apply the parking brakes, push it in to release them. The control will be a yellow diamond-shaped knob labeled parking brakes on newer vehicles. On older vehicles, it may be a round blue knob or some other shape, including a lever that swings from side to side or up and down. Don't use the parking brakes if the brakes are very hot from just having come down a very steep grade, or if the brakes are very wet in freezing temperatures. If they are used while they are very hot, they can be damaged by the heat. If they are used in freezing temperatures when the brakes are very wet, they can freeze so the vehicle cannot move. Use wheel chocks to hold the vehicle. Let hot brakes cool before using the parking brakes. If the brakes are wet, use the brakes lightly while driving in a low gear to heat and dry them. If your vehicle does not have automatic air tank drains, drain your air tanks at the end of each working day to remove moisture and oil. Otherwise, the brakes could fail. Never leave your vehicle unattended without applying the parking brakes or chocking the wheels. Your vehicle might roll away and cause injury and damage.
Do air brakes work instantly, like hydraulic brakes? Why is it important to go slow on downgrades? Using the brakes hard going downhill is okay if you let up on the pedal frequently to cool the brakes. True or false? If you're gone only a short time, you don't need to use the parking brake. True or false? How often should you drain air tanks? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
The Commercial Driver License Video Series is an internal production of the Training Division, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and Commonwealth Media Services, Pennsylvania Department of General Services. The producers wish to acknowledge the valuable assistance given to this series by Consolidated Freightways, York, Pennsylvania, Capital Products, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Rohr Bus Lines, Duncannon, Pennsylvania, and the Eastern Pennsylvania Training Facility, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. This part provides the information related to combination vehicles, tractor trailers, or straight truck and trailers. It will cover driving combinations, coupling and uncoupling, and inspecting combination vehicles. The examiner's manual lists the main steps of the pre-trip inspection as 1. Inspect the engine compartment. 2. Perform the in-vehicle checks. 3. Shut down the engine. 4. Perform the external inspection. The examiner's manual then states, page 33, provided that the driver follows these main steps, let the driver inspect individual items in whatever order he or she likes. Combination vehicles are heavier, longer, and require more driving skill than single commercial vehicles. So drivers of combination vehicles need more knowledge and skill than drivers of single vehicles. Let's begin with some safety factors that apply specifically to combination vehicles. More than half of truck driver deaths in crashes are from truck rollovers. When more cargo is piled up in a truck, the center of gravity moves higher up from the road. The truck becomes easier to turn over. Fully loaded rigs are 10 times more likely to roll over in a crash than empty rigs. Here are 2 things to prevent rollovers. Keep the cargo as close to the ground as possible and go slow on curves and turns. Keeping cargo low is even more important in combination vehicles than in straight trucks. Keep the load centered on your rig because if the load is to one side, it makes the trailer lean, and rollover is more likely. If you have questions on this, you should look at Part 3 of this series, Transporting Cargo. Rollovers happen when you turn too fast, so go slow around corners, on-ramps, off-ramps, and avoid quick lane changes. Trucks with trailers have a dangerous crack-the-whip effect. When you make a quick lane change, this effect can turn the trailer over. Rearward amplification causes the crack-the-whip effect. Here are 8 types of vehicles, and the rearward amplification each has in a quick lane change. 2.0 in the chart means the rear trailer is twice as likely to turn over as the tractor. Triples have a rearward amplification of 3.5. Follow far enough behind other vehicles, at least 1 second for each 10 feet of your vehicle length, plus an extra second if you are going over 40 miles per hour. At night, drive within your lights. Slow down to a safe speed before turning. Whether you are fully loaded or empty, you must control your speed. Large combination vehicles that are empty take longer to stop than when they are fully loaded. The very stiff suspension springs and strong brakes give poor traction when the truck is empty and the wheels can easily lock up. The trailer can swing out, strike other objects, or jackknife. Bobtail tractors are tractors without semi-trailers. Tests have shown that a bobtail takes longer to stop than a semi-trailer loaded to maximum gross weight. When the wheels of a trailer lock up, the trailer will tend to swing around. This is more likely when the trailer is empty or lightly loaded. This is often called a trailer jackknife. The earliest and best way to recognize a skid is to see it in your mirrors. Anytime you brake hard, check the mirrors. Once the trailer swings out of your lane, it is very difficult to prevent a jackknife. Stop using the brake. Release the brakes to get traction back. Do not use the trailer handbrake to straighten out the rake. The brakes on the trailer wheels cause the skid in the first place. Once the trailer wheels grip the road again, the trailer will start to follow the tractor and straighten out. When a vehicle goes around the corner, the rear wheels follow a different path than the front wheels. This is called off-tracking. Off-tracking causes the path followed by a tractor semi to be wider than the rig itself. Longer vehicles will off-track more. The rear wheels of the powered unit will off-track some, and the rear wheels of the trailer will off-track even more. If there is more than one trailer, the rear wheels of the last trailer will off-track the most. Steer the front end wide enough around a corner so the rear end does not run over the curb, pedestrians, other vehicles, so on. If you cannot complete your turn without entering another traffic lane, turn wide as you complete the turn. This is better than swinging wide to the left before starting the turn because it will keep other drivers from passing you on the right. If drivers pass you on the right, you might crash into them when you turn. Take special care when pulling 2 and 3 trailers. Inspect completely. There are more critical parts to check when you have 2 or 3 trailers. Check them all. Look far enough ahead. Doubles and triples must be driven smoothly to avoid rollover or jackknife. Manage space. Doubles and triples take up more space. They are not only longer, but also need more space because they cannot be turned or stopped suddenly. Allow more following distance. Make sure you have large enough gaps before entering or crossing traffic. Be certain you are clear at the sides before changing lanes. Be more careful in adverse conditions. In bad weather, slippery conditions, and mountain driving, you must be especially careful if you drive double and triple bottoms. You will have greater length and more dead axles to pull with your drive axles than other drivers. There is more chance for skids and loss of traction.
What 2 things are important to prevent rollover? When you turn suddenly while pulling doubles, which trailer is most likely to turn over? Why should you not use the trailer handbrake to straighten out a jackknifing trailer? What is off-tracking? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Part 5 of the video series covered the basic air brake system. In combination vehicles, the braking system has parts to control the trailer brakes. The trailer hand valve, also called the trolley valve or Johnson bar, works the trailer brakes. The trailer hand valve should be used only to test the trailer brakes. Do not use it in driving because of the danger of making the trailer skid. The foot brake sends the air to all the brakes on the vehicle, including the trailers. There is much less danger of causing a skid or a jackknife when using just the foot brake. Never use the hand valve for parking because all the air might leak out, unlocking the brakes. Always use the parking brakes when parking. If the trailer does not have spring brakes, use wheel chocks to keep the trailer from moving. The tractor protection valve keeps air in the tractor or truck should the trailer break away or develop a bad leak. The tractor protection valve is controlled by the trailer air supply control valve in the cab. The control valve allows you to open and shut the tractor protection valve. The tractor protection valve will close automatically if air pressure is low, in the range of 20 to 45 psi. When the tractor protection valve closes, it stops any air from going out of the tractor. It also lets the air out of the trailer emergency line. This causes the trailer emergency brakes to come on. The trailer air supply control on newer vehicles is a red 8-sided knob which you use to control the tractor protection valve. You push it in to supply the trailer with air and pull it out to shut the air off and put on the trailer emergency brakes. The valve will pop out, thus closing the tractor protection valve when the air pressure drops into the range 20 to 45 psi. Tractor protection valve controls or emergency valves on older vehicles may not operate automatically. There may be a lever rather than a knob. The normal position is used for pulling a trailer. The emergency position is used to shut the air off and put on the trailer emergency brakes. Every combination vehicle has two air lines, the service line and the emergency line. They run between each vehicle, tractor to trailer, trailer to dolly, dolly to second trailer, so on. The service air line, also called the control line or signal line, carries air which is controlled by the foot brake or the trailer handbrake. Depending on how hard you press the foot brake or hand valve, the pressure in the service line will similarly change. The service line is connected to relay valves on the trailer to apply more or less pressure to the trailer brakes. The relay valve connects the trailer air tanks to the trailer air brakes. As pressure builds up on the service line, the relay valve opens and sends air pressure from the trailer air tank to the trailer brake chambers, thus putting on the trailer brakes. The emergency line has two purposes. First, it supplies air to the trailer air tanks. Secondly, the emergency line controls the emergency brakes on combination vehicles. Loss of air pressure in the emergency line causes the trailer emergency brakes to come on. The pressure loss could be caused by a trailer breaking loose, thus tearing apart the emergency air hose, or it could be caused by a hose, metal tubing, or other part which breaks, letting the air out. When the emergency line loses pressure, it also causes the tractor protection valve to close. The air supply knob will pop out. Emergency lines are often coated with the color red. Red hose, red couplers, or other parts to keep from getting them mixed up with the blue service line. Glad hands are coupling devices used to connect the service and emergency air lines from the truck or tractor to the trailer. The couplers have a rubber seal which prevents air from escaping. Clean the couplers and rubber seals before a connection is made. When connecting the glad hands, press the two seals together with the couplers at a 90-degree angle to each other. A turn of the glad hand attached to the hose will join and lock the couplers. Some vehicles have dead-end or dummy couplers to which the hoses may be attached when they are not in use. This will prevent water and dirt from getting into the coupler and the air lines. Use the dummy couplers when the air lines are not connected to a trailer. If there are no dummy couplers, the glad hands can sometimes be locked together, depending on the couplings. It is very important to keep the air supply clean. When coupling, make sure to couple the proper glad hands together. To help avoid mistakes, colors are used. Blue is for the service lines and red for the emergency lines. Sometimes metal tags are attached to the lines with the words service and emergency stamped on them. If you do cross the air line, supply air will be sent to the service line instead of going to charge the trailer air tanks. Air will not be available to release the trailer spring brakes, parking brakes. If the spring brakes don't release when you push the trailer air supply control, check the airline connections. Older trailers do not have spring brakes. If the air supply in the trailer air tank has leaked away, there will be no emergency brakes and the trailer wheels will turn freely. If you cross the air lines, you could drive away, but you wouldn't have trailer brakes. Always test the trailer brakes before driving with the hand valve or by pulling the air supply, that is the tractor protection valve, control. Pull gently against them in a low gear to make sure the brakes work. Each trailer and converter dolly has one or more air tanks. They are filled by the emergency supply line from the tractor. They provide the air pressure used to operate trailer brakes. Air pressure is sent from the air tanks to the brakes by relay valves. The pressure in the service line tells how much pressure the relay valve should send to the trailer brakes. The pressure in the service line is controlled by the brake pedal and the trailer hand brake. It is important that you don't let water and oil build up in the air tanks. If you do, the brakes may not work right. Each tank has a drain valve on it, and you should drain each tank every day. If your tanks have automatic drains, they will keep moisture out, but you should still open the drains to make sure. Shut-off valves, also called cutout cocks, are used in the service and supply airlines at the back of trailers used to tow other trailers. These valves permit closing the airlines off when another trailer is not being towed. You must check that all shut-off valves are in the open position except the ones at the back of the last trailer, which must be closed. A major leak in the emergency line will cause the tractor protection valve to close and the trailer emergency brakes to come on. You may not notice a major leak in the service line until you try to put the brakes on. Then the air loss from the leak will lower the air tank pressure quickly. If it goes low enough, the trailer emergency brakes will come on.
Why should you not use the trailer hand valve while driving? Describe what the trailer air supply control does. Describe what the service line is for. What is the emergency airline for? Why should you use chocks when parking a trailer without spring brakes? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Knowing how to couple and uncouple correctly is basic to safe operation of combination vehicles. Wrong coupling and uncoupling can be very dangerous. There are differences between different rigs, so learn the details of coupling and uncoupling the truck or trucks you will operate. Check for damage or missing parts. Check to see that the mounting to the tractor is secure, no cracks in the frame, etc. Be sure that the fifth wheel plate is greased as required. Failure to keep the fifth wheel plate lubricated could cause steering problems because of friction between the tractor and trailer. Check if the fifth wheel is in proper position for coupling. Wheel tilted down toward the rear of the tractor. Jaws open. Safety unlocking handle in the automatic lock position. If you have a sliding fifth wheel, make sure it is locked. Make sure the trailer kingpin is not bent or broken. Make sure the area around the vehicle is clear. Be sure trailer wheels are chocked or spring brakes are on. Check that cargo, if any, is secured against movement due to tractor being coupled to the trailer. Put the tractor directly in front of the trailer. Never back under a trailer at an angle because you might push the trailer sideways and break the landing gear. Check position using outside mirrors by looking down both sides of the trailer. Back until the fifth wheel just touches the trailer. Put on the parking brakes, put transmission in neutral. The trailer should be low enough that it is raised slightly by the tractor when the tractor is backed under it. Raise or lower the trailer is needed. If the trailer is too low, tractor may strike and damage the nose of the trailer. If the trailer's too high, it may not couple correctly. Check that the kingpin and fifth wheel are aligned. Check glad hand seals and connect tractor emergency air line to trailer emergency glad hand. Check glad hand seals and connect tractor service air line to trailer service glad hand. Make sure air lines are safely supported where they won't be crushed or caught while the tractor is backing under the trailer. From the cab, push in the air supply knob or move tractor protection valve control from the emergency to the normal position to supply air to the trailer brake system. Wait until the air pressure is normal. Check the brake system for crossed air lines. Shut engine off so you can hear the brakes. Apply and release trailer brakes. Listen for the sound of trailer brakes being applied and released. You should hear the brakes move when applied and air escape when the brakes are released. Check air brake system pressure gauge for signs of major air loss. When you are sure trailer brakes are working, start engine. Make sure the air pressure is up to normal. Pull out the air supply knob or move the tractor protection valve from normal to emergency. Use lowest reverse gear. Back tractor slowly under trailer to avoid hitting the kingpin too hard. Stop when the kingpin is locked into the fifth wheel. Raise trailer landing gear slightly off the ground. Pull tractor gently forward while the trailer brakes are still locked to check that the trailer is locked onto the tractor. Put transmission in neutral. Put parking brakes on. Shut off engine and take key with you so someone won't move the truck while you are under it. Use a flashlight if necessary. Make sure there is no space between the upper and lower fifth wheel. If there is space, something is wrong. Kingpin may be on top of closed fifth wheel jaws. Trailer would come loose very easily. Go under the trailer and look into the back of the fifth wheel. Make sure the fifth wheel jaws have closed around the shank of the kingpin. Check that the locking lever is in the lock position. Check that the safety catch is in position over the locking lever. On some fifth wheels, the catch must be put in place by hand. If the coupling isn't right, don't drive the coupled unit. Get it fixed. Plug the electrical cord into the trailer and fasten the safety catch. Make sure air and electrical lines will not hit any moving parts of the vehicle. Use low gear range to begin raising the landing gear. Once free of weight, switch to the high gear range. Raise the landing gear all the way up. Never drive with the landing gear only part way up, or it may catch on railroad tracks or other things. After raising the landing gear, secure the crank handle safely when full weight of the trailer is resting on the tractor. Check for enough clearance between the rear of the tractor frame and the landing gear. When the tractor turns sharply, it must not hit the landing gear. Check that there is enough clearance between the top of the tractor tires and the nose of the trailer. Remove and store wheel chocks in a safe place. Make sure the surface of the parking area can support the weight of the trailer. Have the tractor lined up with the trailer. Pulling out at an angle can damage the landing gear. Shut off trailer air supply to lock the trailer brakes. Ease pressure on the fifth wheel locking jaws by backing up gently. This will help you release the fifth wheel locking lever. Put parking brakes on while tractor is pushing against the kingpin. This will hold the rig with pressure off the locking jaws. Chock the trailer wheels if the trailer doesn't have spring brakes or if you're not sure. The air could leak out of the trailer emergency air tank, releasing the emergency brakes. The trailer could then move if it didn't have chocks. If trailer is empty, lower the landing gear until it makes firm contact with the ground. If the trailer is loaded, after the landing gear makes firm contact with the ground, turn crank in low gear a few extra turns. This will lift some weight off the tractor. Do not lift the trailer off the fifth wheel. This will make it easier to unlatch the fifth wheel and make it easier to couple next time. Disconnect air lines from trailer. Connect line glad hands to dummy couplers at back of cab or couple them together. Hang electrical cable with plug down to prevent moisture from entering it. Make sure lines are supported so they won't be damaged while driving the tractor. Raise release handle lock. Pull the release handle to open position. Keep legs and feet clear of the rear tractor wheels to avoid serious injury in case the vehicle moves. Pull the tractor forward until fifth wheel comes out from under the trailer. Stop with the tractor frame under the trailer. This prevents the trailer from falling to the ground if the landing gear should collapse or sink. Apply the parking brake, place transmission in neutral. Make sure ground is supporting the trailer. Make sure landing gear is not damaged. Release the parking brakes, check the area, and drive the tractor clear.
What might happen if the trailer is too high when you try to couple? After coupling, how much space should be between the upper and lower fifth wheel? You should look into the back of the fifth wheel to see if it is locked onto the kingpin, true or false. To drive, you need to raise the landing gear only until it just lifts off the pavement, true or false. What is a converter dolly? What are shutoff valves? Why should you pull a dolly out from under a trailer before you disconnect it from the trailer in front? Where should the heaviest trailer be in a set of doubles? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Use the 7-step inspection procedure described in Part 2 of the video series to inspect your combination vehicle. But there are more things to inspect on a combination vehicle than on a single vehicle. Many of these additional things are just more of what are on a single vehicle. For example, tires, wheels, lights, reflectors, etc. However, there are also some new things to check. Check the fifth wheel, lower. Securely mounted to frame, no missing or damaged parts, enough grease, no visible space between upper and lower fifth wheel. Locking jaws around the shank, not the head of the kingpin. Release arm properly seated and safety latch lock engaged. Fifth wheel upper part, glide plates securely mounted to the trailer frame, kingpin not damaged. Electrical cord firmly plugged in and secured. Air lines properly connected to glad hands, no air leaks, properly secured with enough slack for turns. All locking pins present and locked in place. If air powered, no air leaks. Check that the fifth wheel is not so far forward the tractor frame will hit the landing gear or the cab hit the trailer during turns. For the landing gear, fully raised, no missing parts, not bent or otherwise damaged. Crank handle in place and secured. If power operated, no air or hydraulic leaks. Shut-off valves at the rear of trailers, in service and emergency lines. Rear of the front trailer, valve open. Rear of last trailer, valve closed. Converter dolly air tank drain valve, closed. Be sure air lines are supported and glad hands are properly connected. If the spare tire is carried on the converter dolly, make sure it's secured. Be sure the pintle eye of the dolly is in place in the pintle hook of the trailer. Make sure pintle hook is latched. Safety chain should be secured to the trailer, and be sure light cords are firmly in sockets on trailers. Do these checks in addition to those in Part 2, inspecting the air brake system. Check that air flows to all trailers, double and triple trailers. Use the tractor parking brake and/or chock the wheels to hold the vehicle. Wait for the air pressure to reach normal, then push in the red trailer air supply knob. This will supply air to the emergency supply lines. Use the trailer handbrake to provide air to the service line. Go to the rear of the rig. Open the emergency line shutoff valve at the rear of the last trailer. You should hear air escaping, showing the entire system is charged. Close the emergency line valve. Open the service line valve to check that service pressure goes through all the trailers. This test assumes that the trailer handbrake or the service brake pedal is on. Then close the valve. If you do not hear air escaping from both lines, check that the shutoff valves on the other trailers and dollies are in the open position. You must have air all the way to the back for all the brakes to work. Charge the trailer air brake system and check that the trailer rolls freely. Then stop and pull out the trailer air supply control. Pull gently on the trailer with the tractor to check that the trailer emergency brakes are on. Check for normal air pressure. Release the parking brakes, move the vehicle forward slowly, and apply trailer brakes with a hand control. You should feel the brakes come on. This tells you the trailer brakes are connected and working. The trailer brake should be tested with the hand valve, but controlled in normal operation with the foot pedal, which applies air to all service brakes at all wheels.
Which shutoff valves should be open and which closed? How can you test that air flows to all trailers? How can you test the trailer emergency brakes? How can you test the trailer service brakes? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
The Commercial Driver License Video Series is an internal production of the Training Division, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and Commonwealth Media Services, Pennsylvania Department of General Services. The producers wish to acknowledge the valuable assistance given to this series by Consolidated Freightways, York, Pennsylvania, Capital Products, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Rohr Bus Lines, Duncannon, Pennsylvania, and the Eastern Pennsylvania Training Facility, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. This video program deals with hazardous materials. Because hazardous materials can kill or injure, you must have a commercial driver's license with a hazardous materials endorsement before driving vehicles with hazardous material cargoes. To get that endorsement, you must pass a written test about the hazardous materials transportation rules. We will cover your responsibilities as a driver, again, because hazardous materials pose a risk to health, safety, and property during transportation. Next, the procedures that govern the loading and unloading, general requirements, and the special rules for loading and unloading bulk tankers, as well as marking them. And finally, we will discuss driving and parking rules and emergencies. The contents of the video are taken from Section 7, Hazardous Materials Commercial Driver License Manual. Many hazardous materials can injure or kill people. To protect drivers and others, the rules tell shippers how to package safely. Similar rules tell drivers how to load, transport, and unload. Then there are the containment rules. Shippers must warn drivers and others about a material's hazardous qualities. They put warning labels on packages and describe materials in a way that clearly warns of the risk. There are rules for drivers. As a driver, you must warn others if there is an accident or a leak. Placards are another way to tell of the risk. Remember, you must pass a written test if you want to transport hazardous materials. To pass the test, you must know how to recognize the shipments of hazardous materials, safely load shipments, correctly placard your vehicle, and safely transport shipments. You must learn the rules and follow them. Following the rules reduces the risk of injury from hazardous materials. Taking shortcuts by breaking the rules is unsafe. Rule breakers can be fined and put in jail. Inspect your vehicle before and during each trip. Law enforcement officers may stop and inspect your vehicle. They can also check your shipping papers. They will look for the hazardous materials endorsement on your license. Hazardous materials transportation. Who does what? The shipper sends products from one place to another by truck, railroad, ship, or airplane. Uses the hazardous material regulations to decide the products to be shipped. Provides, as a minimum, proper shipping name, hazard class, identification number, correct packaging, correct label and markings, correct placard. So the shipper is responsible for packaging the materials, labeling and marking the package, preparing the shipping paper, and supplying the placards, and certifies on the shipping paper that the shipment is prepared according to the rules. The carrier takes the shipment from the shipper to its destination, checks that the shipper correctly named, labeled, and marked the shipment, refuses improper shipments, reports accidents and incidents involving hazardous materials to the proper government agency. The driver makes sure the shipper has identified, marked, and labeled the product. Refuses leaking shipments. Placards his vehicle when loading if needed. Safely transports the shipment without delay. Follows all special rules about transporting hazardous materials. Keeps hazardous material shipping papers in the proper place. Some words and phrases have special meanings when talking about hazardous materials. Some of the words and phrases in the communication rules section may be on your test. A materials hazard class reflects the risk associated with it. There are 22 different hazard classes. You will not be tested on their exact meanings, but you should be familiar with the names. Blasting agent, combustible liquid, corrosive material, etiologic agents, explosive A, explosive B, explosive C, flammable liquid, flammable gas, flammable solid, irritating material, non-flammable gas, organic peroxide, ORM, which stands for other regulated material, ORM A, B, C, D, and E. Oxidizer, poison A, poison B, radioactive material. The shipping paper describes a shipment of hazardous material. Each item described on the shipping paper shows, in fact must show, the material's hazard class. Shipping orders, bills of lading, manifests are all shipping papers. This is an example of a shipping paper. Why shipping papers? After an accident or hazardous material leak, you may be unable to speak. Firefighters and police can prevent more injury if they know the hazards involved. Your life and the lives of others may depend on how quickly the hazardous cargo shipping papers are found. For that reason alone, the rules require shippers to describe shipments correctly on shipping papers, require carriers and drivers to put tabs on shipping papers, or to keep hazardous material shipping papers on top of other shipping papers, require drivers to keep shipping papers for hazardous cargo in a pouch on the driver's door or in clear view within reach while driving, or on the driver's seat when out of the vehicle. Shippers put diamond-shaped labels on hazardous materials packages. These labels warn others of the hazards. If the diamond label won't fit on the package, shippers put the label on a tag. For example, compressed gas cylinders that will not hold a label will have tags or decals. Here are some examples of labels. Placards are used to warn others of hazardous cargo. Placards are signs put on the outside of a vehicle to show the hazard class of the cargo. Do you remember what hazard class is? A placarded vehicle must have at least 4 identical placards. They are put on the front, rear, and both sides and must be readable from all 4 directions. There are 19 Department of Transportation specification placards. They are 10 3/4 inches square, turned upright on a point in a diamond shape. Cargo tanks show the hazardous material identification number of their contents on placards or orange panels. There are 2 main lists used by shippers, carriers, and drivers. Before transporting an unfamiliar product, look for its name on both lists. Some products are on both lists, others may be on only one. Always check both the hazardous material table, the list of hazardous substances, and reportable quantities. Let's start with the hazardous materials table. This is a part of a typical hazardous materials table. In column 1, you are told which shipping mode is affected. For example, a plus will show the shipping name and hazard class to use, even if the name of the product doesn't match the hazard class definition. Look at this entry. The plus alerts you to the fact that you are carrying carbon monoxide. Remember, even if the product name doesn't say it. Then column 3 tells you the hazard class, in this case, flammable gas. Next, in column 3A, you find the hazardous materials identification number. Column 4 tells you the label or labels needed. No label is needed where the table shows the word none. The Department of Transportation and the Environmental Protection Agency want to know about spills of some products. These products are called hazardous substances. The list in column 3 shows each product's reportable quantity, the RQ. This is the amount of spill that must be reported. The shipper identifies RQs on the shipping paper. The letters RQ may appear before or after the basic item description. You or your employer must report any spill of reportable quantity of these substances. Starred entries also occur in the hazardous materials table. Look at the entry for phosgene in column 1 of the list. The star tells you that the hazardous materials table also lists phosgene. Column 2 shows that carbonyl chloride is another name for the same product. The reportable quantity, RQ, for phosgene is 10 pounds. If there are 10 pounds or more in a single package, the shipment contains a reportable quantity. The item description on the shipping paper will include the letters RQ. This tells you, the driver, that spills must be reported to the appropriate authorities. If the words inhalation hazard are on the shipping paper or package, the rules require poison placard. You must use poison placards in addition to any others needed by the product's hazard class. When required, always show the hazard class placard and the poison placard, even for small amounts.
Shippers package in order to the material. Drivers placard their vehicle to the risk. What 3 things do you need to know to decide which placards, if any, you need? A hazardous materials ID number must appear on the number must also appear on cargo tanks. Where must you keep shipping papers describing hazardous materials? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
The shipping paper describes a shipment. The shipping paper for hazardous material must include page numbers if the shipping paper has more than one page. The first page must tell the total number of pages. A proper description of the hazardous material. A shipper's certification signed by the shipper saying the shipment was prepared according to regulations. If the shipping paper describes both hazardous and non-hazardous products, the hazardous materials will be either described first or highlighted in a contrasting color or identified by an X placed before the shipping name in a column identified as HRD for hazardous material. The letters RQ may be used instead of X if the shipment is a reportable quantity. The basic description of a hazardous product includes the proper shipping name, hazard class, ID number. None of these entries may be abbreviated. The item description must also show the total quantity and unit of measure, and if a reportable quantity, the letters RQ. Total quantity can appear before or after the basic description. Packaging type and the unit of measurement may be abbreviated. 10 cartons, paint, flammable liquid, UN 1263, 500 pounds. The shipper of hazardous waste must put the word waste before the name of the material on the shipping paper. Waste acetone. Flammable liquid, UN 1090. A non-hazardous material may not be described by using a hazard class or an ID number. When the shipper packages a hazardous material, it is certified that the package is prepared according to regulations. The signed shipper's certification appears on the original shipping paper. The only exception is if the shipper has their own product. Unless a package is clearly unsafe, you may accept the shipper's certification. Your employer may have additional requirements. Shippers print required markings directly on the package, an attached label or tag. Most important marking is the name of the hazardous material. It is the same name as on the shipping paper. When required, the shipper will mark the package with the names and address of shipper or consignee, the hazardous materials shipping name and identification number, the labels required. If the rules require it, the shipper will put RQ for reportable quantity or inhalation hazard on the package. Cartons with liquid containers inside may also have this side up markings. The labels used always reflect the hazard class of the product. If the package needs more than one label, the labels will be close together, near the proper shipping name. Learn to recognize shipments of hazardous materials. Does the shipping paper have an entry with a proper shipping name, hazard class, and ID number? A highlighted entry or one with an X or RQ in the HM column? Other clues suggest hazardous materials. What business is the shipper in? Paint dealer, chemical supply, scientific supply house, biological laboratory or supplier, pest control or agricultural supplier, explosives, munitions, or fireworks dealer? Are there tanks with diamond labels or placards on the premises? What type of package is being shipped? Cylinders and drums are often used for hazardous material shipments. Does the package bear a hazard class label, proper shipping name, or ID number? Are there any handling precautions? When transporting a hazardous waste, you must sign and carry a uniform hazardous waste manifest. The name and EPA registration number of the shipper, carriers, and destination must appear on the manifest. The shipper will prepare, date, and sign the manifest. Treat the manifest as a shipping paper when transporting the waste. Only give the waste shipment to another registered carrier or treatment facility. Each carrier transporting the shipment must sign the manifest. After you deliver the shipment, keep your copy of the manifest. Each copy must have all needed signatures and dates, including those of the person to whom you delivered the waste. Attach the right placards as you load the vehicle and before you move it. You may move an improperly placarded vehicle only in an emergency to protect life or property. Placards must appear on both sides and ends of the vehicle. Each placard must be easily seen from the direction it faces. Placed so the words or numbers are level and read from left to right and at least 3 inches away from any other markings. First, check that the shipper is using the correct hazard class for the shipping paper and package label. If you are not familiar with the material, ask the shipper or contact your office. To decide which placards to use, you need to know the shipper's hazard class, the amount shipped, and the total weight of all hazardous materials in your vehicle.
What is a shipper's certification? Where does it appear? Who signs it? When may non-hazardous material be described by hazard class words or ID number? Name 5 hazard classes that require placarding in any amount. A shipment described on a hazardous waste manifest may only be delivered to another carrier or treatment facility, which then signs giving you a copy which you must keep. Your load includes 20 pounds of poison A and 1,000 pounds flammable gas. What placards do you need, if any? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Do all you can to protect containers of hazardous materials. Don't use any tools which might damage containers or other packaging during loading. Don't use hooks. Before loading or unloading, set the parking brake. Make sure the vehicle will not move. Many products are more hazardous in the heat. Load hazardous materials away from heat sources. Watch for signs of leaking or damaged containers. Leaks spell trouble. Do not transport leaking packages. Depending upon the material, you, your truck, and others could be in danger. No smoking. When loading hazardous materials, keep fire away. Don't let people smoke nearby. Never smoke around explosives, oxidizers, flammables. Secure against movement. Make sure the containers don't move around in transit. Brace them so they will not fall or bounce around. Be very careful when loading containers that have valves or other fittings. Do not open any package between the points of origin and destination. Never transfer hazardous products from one package to another. You may empty a cargo tank, but do not empty any other package while it is on the vehicle. Cargo heater rules. There are special cargo heater rules for loading, explosives, flammable liquid, flammable gas. The rules usually forbid the use of cargo heaters, including automatic cargo heater air conditioning units. Unless you have read all the related rules, don't load the above products in a cargo space that has a heater. Use the closed cargo space. You cannot have overhang or tailgate loads of explosives, flammable solids, oxidizing materials. You must load these hazards into a closed cargo space unless all packages are fire and water resistant or covered with a fire and water resistant tarp. Explosives. Before loading or unloading any explosive, turn your engine off. Then check the cargo space. You must disable cargo heaters. Disconnect heater power sources and drain heater fuel tanks. There must be no sharp points that might damage cargo. Look for bolts, screws, nails, broken side panels, and broken floorboards. Use a floor lining with Class A or Class B explosives. The floors must be tight, and the liner must not contain steel or iron. Use extra care to protect explosives. Never use hooks or other metal tools. Never drop, throw, or roll a shipment. Protect explosive packages from other cargo that might cause damage. Do not transfer a Class A or B explosive from one vehicle to another on a public roadway except in emergency. If safety requires an emergency transfer, set out red warning reflectors, flags, or electric lanterns. You must warn other highway users. Never transport damaged packages of explosives. Do not take a package that shows any dampness or oily stain. Do not transport explosives A in triples. Do not transport explosives A in vehicle combinations if there is a placarded cargo tank in the combination or the other vehicle in the combination contains initiating explosives, radioactive materials labeled yellow, Roman III, Class A or B poisons, hazardous materials in a portable tank, specification 106A or 110A tank. Corrosive liquids. If loading by hand, load breakable containers of corrosive liquids one by one. Keep them right side up. Do not drop or roll the containers. Load them onto an even floor surface. Only stack carboys if the lower tiers can bear the weight of the upper tiers safely. Do not load nitric acid above any other product or stack more than 2 high. Load charged storage batteries so their liquid won't spill. Keep them right side up. Make sure other cargo won't fall against or short circuit them. Never load corrosive liquids next to or above explosives A, explosives B, flammable solid, oxidizing material. Compressed gases, including cryogenic liquids. If your vehicle doesn't have racks to hold cylinders, the cargo space floor must be flat. The cylinders must be held upright or braced laying down flat or in racks attached to the vehicle or in boxes that will keep them from turning over. Poisons. Never transport poison A or irritating materials in containers with interconnections. Never load a package labeled poison, poison gas, or irritant in the driver's cab or sleeper. Radioactive materials. Some packages of radioactive materials bear a number called the transport index. The shipper labels these packages radioactive 2 or radioactive 3 and prints the package's transport index on the label. Radiation surrounds each package, passing through all nearby packages. To deal with this problem, the number of packages you can load together is controlled. Their closeness to people, animals, and unexposed film is also controlled. The transport index tells the degree of control needed during transportation. The total transport index of all packages in a single vehicle must not exceed 50. Mixed loads. The rules require some products to be loaded separately. Do not load them together in the same cargo space.
Around which 3 hazard classes must you never smoke? Which 3 hazard classes should not be loaded into a trailer that has a heater air conditioner unit? Should the floor liner required for explosives A be stainless steel? At the shipper's dock, you are given a shipping paper for 100 cartons of battery acid. You already have 100 pounds of silver cyanide on board. What precautions do you take? Name a hazard class that uses a transport index. What is the maximum transport index that can be loaded in a single vehicle? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
The glossary in your driver's manual gives the special meaning of the word bulk. Cargo tanks are bulk containers permanently attached to a vehicle. Cargo tanks remain on the vehicle when you load and unload them. Portable tanks are bulk containers which are not permanently attached to a vehicle. They are loaded or unloaded with the product while off the vehicle. Portable tanks are then put on a vehicle for transportation. There are many types of cargo tanks in use. The most common are MC306 for liquids and MC331 for gases. You must display the ID number of the contents of portable tanks and cargo tanks. Product ID numbers are in the column 3A of the hazardous materials table. The rules require black 4-inch numbers on orange panels or DOT placards. Portable tanks must also show the lessee or owner's name. They must also show the shipping name and ID number of the contents on 2 opposing sides. The letters must be at least 2 inches tall. The ID number must appear on each side and each end of the tanks that hold 1,000 gallons or more. The ID numbers must still show when the portable tank is on the vehicle. If they don't, you must display the ID number on both sides and ends of the vehicle. The person in charge of loading and unloading a cargo tank must be sure someone is always watching. The person watching the loading or unloading must have a clear view of the cargo tank, be within 25 feet of the tank, be aware of the hazards, know the procedures to follow in an emergency, and be authorized to move the cargo tank and able to do so. Close all manholes and valves before moving a tank of hazardous materials. It does not matter how small the amount in the tank or how short the distance. Manholes and valves must not leak. Turn off your engine before loading or unloading any flammable liquid. Only run the engine if needed to operate a pump. Ground a cargo tank correctly before filling it through an open filling hole. Ground the tank before opening the filling hole and maintain the ground until after closing the filling hole. Keep liquid discharge valves on a compressed gas tank closed except when loading and unloading. Unless your engine runs a pump for product transfer, turn it off when loading or unloading. If you use the engine, turn it off after product transfer before unhooking the hose. Unhook all loading, unloading connections before coupling, uncoupling, or moving a chlorine cargo tank. Always chock trailers and semi-trailers to prevent motion when uncoupled from the power unit.
What are cargo tanks? How is a portable tank different from a cargo tank? Your engine runs a pump used during delivery of compressed gas. Should you turn off the engine before or after unhooking hoses after delivery? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
Never park with explosives A or explosives B within 5 feet of the traveled part of the road. Unless your work requires it, do not park within 300 feet of a bridge, tunnel, or building, or any place where people gather, or an open fire. If you must park to do your job, do so only briefly. Never park on private property unless the owner is aware of the danger. Someone must always watch the parked vehicle. You may let someone else watch it for you only if your vehicle is on shipper's property, or on the carrier's property, or on the consignee's property. The person watching a placarded vehicle must be in the vehicle, awake, and not in the sleeper berth, or within 100 feet of the vehicle and have it within clear view. Be aware of the hazards, know what to do in emergencies, and be able to move the vehicle if needed. You can leave your vehicle unattended in a safe haven. A safe haven is a government-approved place for parking unattended vehicles loaded with explosives. You might break down and have to use stopped vehicle signals. Use reflective triangles or red electric lights. Never use burning signals such as flares or fuses around a tank used for flammable liquid or flammable gas, whether loaded or empty, vehicle loaded with explosives A, explosive B, flammable liquid, flammable gas. Some states and counties require permits to transport hazardous materials or waste. They may limit the routes you can use. Local rules about routes and permits change often. It is your job as a driver to find out if you need permits or must use special routes. Make sure you have all needed papers before starting. If you work for the carrier, ask your dispatcher about route limits or permits. If you are an independent and are planning a new route, check with state agencies where you plan to travel. Some localities prohibit transportation of hazardous materials through tunnels, over bridges, or other roadways. Check before you start. Whenever placarded, avoid heavily populated areas, crowds, tunnels, narrow streets, and alleys. Take other routes, even if inconvenient, unless there is no other way. Never drive a placarded vehicle near open fires unless you can safely pass without stopping. If transporting Class A or Class B explosives, you must have a written route plan and follow that plan. Carriers prepare the route plan in advance and give the driver a copy. You may plan the route yourself if you pick up the explosives at a location other than your employer's terminal. Write out the plan in advance. Keep a copy of it with you while transporting the explosives. Deliver shipments of explosives only to authorized persons or leave them in locked rooms designed for explosive storage. A carrier must choose the safest route to transport placarded radioactive material. After choosing the route, the carrier must tell the driver about the radioactive materials and show the route to be taken. Do not smoke within 25 feet of a placarded tank used for flammable liquids or gases. Also, do not smoke or carry a lighted cigarette, cigar, or pipe within 25 feet of any vehicle which contains explosives, oxidizers, flammables. Turn off your engine before fueling a placarded vehicle. Someone must always be at the nozzle controlling fuel flow. The power unit of a placarded vehicle must have a fire extinguisher with a UL rating of 10 B, C, or more. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. Check placarded vehicles with dual tires at the start of each trip and when you park. You must stop and check the tires every 2 hours or 100 miles, whichever is less. The only acceptable way to check tire pressure is to use a tire pressure gauge. Do not drive with a tire that is leaking or flat except to the nearest safe place to fix it. Remove any overheated tire. Do not take a hazardous material shipment without a properly prepared shipping paper. A shipping paper for hazardous materials must always be easily recognized. Other people must be able to find it quickly after an accident. Clearly distinguish hazardous material shipping papers from others by tabbing them or keeping them on top of the stack of papers. When you are behind the wheel, keep shipping papers within your reach with your seatbelt on or in a pouch on the driver's door. They must be easily seen when someone enters the cab. When not behind the wheel, leave shipping papers in the driver's door pouch or on the driver's seat. A carrier must give each driver transporting Class A or Class B explosives a copy of FM CSR Part 397. The carrier must also give written instructions on what to do if delayed or in an accident. The written instructions must include the names and telephone numbers of people to contact, including carrier agents or shippers, the nature of the explosives transported, the precautions to take in emergencies such as fires, accidents, or leaks. You must be familiar with and have in your possession while driving the shipping papers, written emergency instructions, written route plan, and a copy of FM CSR Part 397. Stop before crossing a railroad if your vehicle is placarded or carries any amount of chlorine or has cargo tanks, whether loaded or empty, used for hazardous materials. You must stop 15 to 50 feet before the nearest rail. Proceed only when you are sure no train is coming. Don't shift gears while crossing the tracks. The Department of Transportation has a guidebook for firefighters, police, and industry personnel. The guidebook tells them what to do first to protect themselves and the public from hazardous materials. The guide is indexed by shipping name and hazardous material ID number. Emergency personnel look for these things on the shipping paper. That is why it is vital that the shipping name, ID number, label, and placards are correct. As a professional driver, your job at the scene of an accident is to keep people away from the area, limit the spread of material, only if you can safely do so, communicate the danger to emergency response personnel. Follow this checklist. Check to see that your driving partner is okay. Keep shipping papers with you. Keep people far away and upwind. Warn others of the danger. Send for help. Follow your employer's instructions. You might have to control minor truck fires on the road. However, unless you have the training and equipment to do so safely, don't fight hazardous material fires. Dealing with hazardous material fires requires special training and protective gear. If hazardous material is spilling from your vehicle, park it. Secure the area. Stay there. Send someone for help. Explosives. If your vehicle breaks down or is in an accident while carrying explosives, warn others of the danger. Keep bystanders away. Do not allow smoking or open fire near the vehicle. Flammable liquids. If you are transporting flammable liquid and have an accident or your vehicle breaks down, prevent bystanders from gathering. Warn people of the danger. Keep them from smoking. Flammable solids and oxidizing materials. If a flammable solid or oxidizing material spills, warn others of the fire hazard. Do not open smoldering packages of flammable solids. Remove them from the vehicle if you can safely do so. Gather and remove any broken packages if safe to do so. Corrosive materials. If corrosive spill or leak in transit, be careful to avoid further damage or injury when handling the containers. Compressed gas. If compressed gas is leaking from your vehicle, warn others of the danger. Poisons. You must protect yourself, other people, and property from harm. Remember that many products classed as poison are also flammable. Radioactive materials. If a leak or broken package involves radioactive material, tell your dispatcher or supervisor as soon as possible. The National Response Center helps coordinate emergency response to chemical hazards. They are a resource to the local police and firefighters. You or your employer must phone when any of the following occur as a direct result of a hazardous materials incident. A person is killed, a person receives injuries requiring hospitalization, estimated carrier or other property damage exceeds $50,000. The person making the immediate telephone report should be ready to give their name and address of the carrier they work for, phone number where they can be reached, date, time, and location of incident, the extent of the injuries, if any, classification, name, and quantity of hazardous materials involved if such information is available, type of incident and nature of hazardous material involvement, and whether a continuing danger to life exists at the scene. If a reportable quantity of hazardous substances was involved, the caller should give the name of the shipper, the quantity of the hazardous substance discharged. Be prepared to give your employer the required information. Carriers must make detailed written reports within 15 days. The Chemical Transportation Emergency Center, ChemTREC, in Washington also has a 24-hour toll-free line. ChemTREC was created to provide emergency personnel with technical information about the physical properties of hazardous products. The National Response Center and ChemTREC are in close communication. If you call either one, they will tell the other about the problem when appropriate.
If your placarded trailer has dual tires, how often should you check the tires? What is a safe haven? How close to the traveled part of the roadway can you park with explosives be? How close can you park to a bridge, tunnel, or building with the same load? What type of fire extinguisher must placarded vehicles carry? You're hauling 100 pounds of flammable solid, dangerous when wet material. Do you need to stop before railroad crossings? At a rest area, you discover your hazardous material shipment slowly leaking from the vehicle. There is no phone around. What should you do? What is the emergency response guidebook? If you cannot answer these questions, or you are uncomfortable with your answers, review this video and the pertinent sections of the manual.
The Commercial Driver License Video Series is an internal production of the Training Division, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and Commonwealth Media Services, Pennsylvania Department of General Services. The producers wish to acknowledge the valuable assistance given to this series by Consolidated Freightways, York, Pennsylvania, Capital Products, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Rohr Bus Lines, Duncannon, Pennsylvania, and the Eastern Pennsylvania Training Facility, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania.